How are you doing?
It's another beautiful day in Western PA.
That's right, and we've got another special program for Clarion Connection. And we're going to talk about state funding of school districts in the Clarion County. And with us today, we have Glenn Watson. He's president of the Redbank Valley School District School Board, and Eric Funk, president of the Clarion Area School Board. And we have the superintendent of Redbank, Mike Drezewicki, and Superintendent for Clarion Area, Mike Stahlman. Guys, I understand that the state funding, well, it's gone down considerably last year, and there's a proposal to further decrease it this year, but the way the state funding comes to the local school districts could be changing. Does anyone want to highlight that?
Basically, the funding this year is going to be bundled, or the proposal is to bundle the funding. The state's referring it to the bundle as a student achievement block grant. And basically it's taking basic ed funding, student transportation, both private and public, and SSI, Social Security, and bundling it in one line item. This is a little different than's been done in the past. Funding levels for basic education funding are going back to or being maintained at 08-09 levels. So that's the primary difference.
Well, the packaging that's being proposed, there's a funding cap on that then for the school districts. I mean, even though there's requirements of you doing certain things, the funding may not necessarily increase.
Ron, I think that's one of our biggest fears is when you start bundling all these different programs into one, now you're looking at a flat funding formula possibly in the future. For example, right now we're facing flat funding in the special education funding area, and we're facing elimination of reimbursement for charter school expenses. So if those types of policies continue forward with this same block grant, we're looking at flat funding then for transportation and basic ed funding, and we know transportation costs are going to drive up as we go through time. So that causes us a lot of concern in the long run.
And there are limits in terms of even if a school board or a district wanted to raise taxes, I don't think anybody wants to raise taxes, but there's limits as to how much you can raise the taxes, and the limit is far less than the cuts that the state is proposing.
Well, through Act 1 a couple of years ago, Ron, they instituted that program where the PDE, Pennsylvania Department of Education, sets an index that each district can raise their taxes to without going to a referendum. I think this year ours was around 4%.
Yes.
So it's a very negligible increase, and it's not really enough to keep up with the expense increases that we're having. The issue that I see is that at some point the districts are going to have to increase beyond that index, and I don't see any public support for, say, a 10 mil tax increase to do a catch-up, especially if every year a district keeps banging their taxpayers for a 4% every year. Then it's all of a sudden they have to come back and ask for a 10 or 15%. It's going to be very difficult to get that passed. So that really is one of the big issues. What we really have to watch out for here is the changes that are going through right now. I think the state is putting a real importance on cyber and charter schools, and what they're doing is they're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're taking money from the public schools to help fund those programs, and there seems to be an increased interest in that. And what we have to watch out for local taxpayers is that difference is going to have to be made up locally. And we're not talking about a little bit. We're talking, I think the number we talked about last night was $1 billion out of the $9 billion that the state spends on education. So, your local taxpayers are looking at potentially huge tax increases to pick up that tab. And that's one of the reasons that we talked about doing this show, was to try to get that word out there to folks so that they're educated on what's coming.
Well, if a student comes to you and says, hey, I want to go to cyber school, how much does that cost the district?
Basically, right now, districts are paying about $10,000 for a regular ed student and $20,000 for a special needs student. In the past, it's varied a little bit, but it's become more consistent the last year or two, which is a significant expense for local districts, because the funding for that at least the nominal reimbursement the state used to provide, as Mike said earlier, has gone away last year with this state budget.
So for a cyber school student, there's no option. You have to provide that support.
Yeah, that's just one of the mandates, Ron, that the school districts face. Cyber charter schools are one. Glenn talked earlier and was right on the target about the impact that local taxpayers are going to have to pay. Our PSERS contribution this year at Clarion's 42%.
Do you want to explain what a PSERS is?
The Pennsylvania State Employees Retirement System. That's our mandated contribution into that fund to keep the level where it needs to be. Our index at Clarion is 2.1%. We can't even keep up with our mandated retirement contribution based on what we can pass on to the local taxpayers. So it's cyber charter schools are one thing, prevailing wage is another thing, economic furloughs are another mandate that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania hasn't considered as they push responsibility down to local school boards.
What do you mean by economic furloughs?
Most other businesses can take a look at their revenue stream, their goals, what they'd like to do, and staff according to those situations. Public schools, that's not the case. Because revenues are declining, costs are going up in other areas, we do not have the ability, based on economic factors, to reduce our staffing to correspond with the revenue levels. And of course, we are a people business. So our people expenses are the largest portion of our budget by a significant margin.
Did you want to say something, Mike? Oh, no. In terms of even if you had the option of economic furloughs, those bring other concerns and larger classes or cutting classes and that type of thing.
Well, I think that's the really hard part about being on a school board right now, is that you have to really be able to balance the educational offerings that you're giving to your student population with the expense account that you're handing to your property owners and your taxpayers. You have to be able to look at what you're offering and try to continue to offer the best educational opportunity that you can, but you also have to look at what's in the bank account and do it in such a way that you can survive until tomorrow and offer those educational opportunities tomorrow.
And yeah, it's nobody's being a champion of furloughing educators. I think all of us here want to put all the resources we can in front of every student that we can. But the reality of the fiscal side of it is there's a balance between what we can do, what we have to do, and how we pay for those things, and that's the challenge that we have.
Is there a danger? It seems every year that the state cuts funding a little bit, and every year the schools say, "Oh my God, we're going to die," But somehow we, to your credit, you find budget cuts. Doesn't it come to a point where, there just isn't going to be any more money, and what do you do then?
That's an excellent question, Ron, and we're really probably to that point. We know that we still have very little that we can cut. We made some significant cuts last year. Those cuts will be maintained throughout the next budget, and we're using up fund balance to the point where it's starting to be uncomfortable with, much like your personal savings account at home that you keep for that emergency. That's going to be gone, and we're going to have to rely on two areas. One is raising taxes, which we've already talked about, the limits on raising taxes. And the other is to eliminate programs that impact our students in a positive way. And we really don't want to get to that point, but we're there. We're very close to that.
I mean, many of the programs that really stand the potential for being eliminated are things that have just been instituted in the last 5 or 10 years. I mean, all-day kindergarten. I think when all of us went to school, maybe, Ron, there wasn't kindergarten when you went to school, I don't know. But
I don't even know whether I had first grade then.
But, I think you're going to see districts, and we've seen districts in this area already eliminate the all-day kindergarten and go back to half-day kindergarten. You're going to see different programs like that eliminated. You potentially could see electives eliminated and end up getting down to the point where, we're back to the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, and just trying to survive. It's really a frustrating time to be on a school board.
And all those have impacts beyond the school where, if it's a 2-member working family or something and your kid's not in kindergarten, then you have babysitting expenses and that. So the impacts across the community on even a relatively small cut like that.
Right. Well, and I think the state kind of has played some games with what they've marketed as their public education funding. I think if you go back to last year or maybe the year before, when the federal stimulus money came out, what the state did was they basically put that stimulus money into education and then took an equal amount back out, so that the school districts were really level funded. And then the following year, which I think was last year, they said, well, we're going to level fund from last year, but they level funded what the state gave and didn't add that stimulus amount. So we basically had a funding cut last year. So it's just been a really challenge to try to deal with this. And you know, our staff members, I can't speak for Clarion. I'm sure their staff members are the same way, but our staff has been very great to work with. They've been willing to sit down and talk about options. Hasn't been comfortable for them. Moving into the future, it's going to be less comfortable for them, and I think they know that it's not comfortable for the board either. So.
I think that is important to note that the professional staff, whether it's teachers or clerical, have been pretty flexible in dealing with the situation too.
Yeah, speaking for Clarion, certainly, we've been pleased with all levels of our staffing have been proactive in trying to help us find ways to deliver the highest quality educational product we can, even in view of these challenging economic times. And unfortunately, that sort of cooperation is going to need to even be enhanced in the future. The ball keeps moving. It keeps getting tighter and tighter on the fiscal side, and everybody concerned, from our taxpayers to our parents to our students to our staff and our school board, are going to have to keep their eye on alternatives that help deliver that best possible quality educational product to kids. And it's going to result in some changes. I think everything is and has to be on the table at all times. That's just the world that we live in today.
Do you find it harder and harder to get people to run for school board?
Well, not in our particular case.
Right. But I mean, there's a lot of responsibility, and sometimes they don't have the background,
Well, I think historically that's been a position that there really hasn't been very often. There's not a lot of candidates running for that position. I know in Redbank we're divided into 3 different districts, and often there'll be one seat in one district that has 2 or 3 people running for it, and then there'll be 2 seats in another district that only one person is running. So we have to find somebody to step into that other seat. I'm sure you're in a similar situation.
Yeah, we've been fortunate in so much as we don't have those geographical requirements. So we have always had adequate candidates to fill the needs. For instance, we had an opening, an unfortunate opening here just a few weeks back, and we had 3 outstanding candidates apply, for that opening. So we haven't experienced a lack of that. But certainly, there's no great compelling reason for anybody to be impassioned about being on the board.
Well, it's just a lot of responsibility, like I mentioned, and
I would say it's very rewarding,
yeah.
And you really learn a lot about the whole process. What I've learned in the last 6.5 years about how education operates in the state, and especially in Redbank Valley, at least now I can carry on an intelligent conversation about it, or somewhat intelligent, and when I'm complaining about it, I've already been there to try to do something about it. I really think that everybody should take at least one turn on school board or one try at it, just to at least educate themselves and try to make a positive impact in their district.
When you think about the future of Clarion County in this particular case, there's no position that has a greater impact. What we do with our children is what our future is going to be like. So it is very rewarding. There's no question about that.
Okay, well, let's take a commercial break, and when we resume, we'll talk about what we're going to do with our children.
Members of the Williams family, did everyone enjoy our Hershey-Harrisburg getaway?
Yes!
Did we go on an amazing safari?
Yes!
Stay in a fabulous hotel?
Yes!
And ride world-class roller coasters?
Yeah, Dad was too chicken to ride.
Not funny.
Did we make our own candy bars?
Yes!
And how about kayaking down the Susquehanna River?
Yes!
Are we ready to head back home?
No.
You're just smiles away from a good time in the Hershey-Harrisburg region. Log on to visithersheyharrisburg.org to learn more.
My name is Sue Smith. I'm 38 and I work at a graphic design company. And the teenage me would tell you,
I wouldn't be into drawing and art if it wasn't for Big Brothers Big Sisters. My big sister showed me early on that I could do anything. And to the young me,
That meant a lot. My big sister's name is Sheila, and Sheila is the reason that this 8-year-old grows up to have an amazing job as a graphic designer.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Are you hungry for a delicious homemade Italian spaghetti dinner?
Manja manja.
Clarion Boy Scout Troop 51 invites you to their annual spaghetti dinner on Saturday, May 12th at the Clarion Moose Lodge. Treat Mom for Mother's Day and enjoy a generous plate of spaghetti topped with our world-famous homemade meatballs, sauce, salad, bread, drinks, and dessert.
Delicioso.
Dinners will be served from 2 to 8 p.m. Tickets are $6 for adults, $3 for kids. That's the Boy Scout Troop 51 annual spaghetti dinner, May 12th at the Clarion Moose Lodge.
Welcome back to Clarion Connection. I'm Ron Wilshire, and we're talking with 4 representatives of the Redbank and the Clarion Area School District this morning, talking about the proposed state budget. Governor Corbett's proposed a very lean budget for the schools, and they're facing some serious possible cutbacks. But it is a proposal. There are other steps before this becomes law. So where do we go from here? What would you suggest?
Well, Ron, I think that the idea for us to come on the show this morning is to try to create some awareness to what's going on. It is a preliminary budget from the governor. Our legislators will be back in session down in Harrisburg April 30th, and they will begin to meet in appropriations and have discussion on, what the final budget looks like. And as we had talked about, the impact that the significant reductions in funding are having on local schools, Redbank Valley and Clarion area and all the schools in the region, I think it's an opportunity for members of the community to get out and voice their thoughts to their local representatives as a voice for public schools and our kids in the programs that we have that impact their learning.
I think it's very important that those contacts go out to your local legislatures and let the legislatures and the state government know that our students are our most important asset. They are our future, and we need to do what we can now to provide them the best education. And we really need the revenue sources to be able to do that. So get out there and contact your legislatures, anybody that you can drag along with that to make sure that we get a voice heard down in Harrisburg.
I think one of the things that is really affecting all of this, and I keep going back to it, is the cyber charter funding. And people need to be aware that, if your child wants to do a cyber school and do their schooling online on the computer at home, they have to understand that there is a cost involved to the local district. I think many people don't understand that. And also, like I said earlier, I think the state's impetus right now is really being put on cyber charter. They're trying to really focus on that and push that. And if you do talk to your legislators, I think that's one of the things that you need to talk to them about, is to try to get that funding pulled back into the public ed program. Especially in the rural areas like here, we offer, I think, a very good program. I think Clarion Area's program is an excellent educational program. Our graduation rates are high, our dropout rates are low. Our kids are very successful. I think that public education in this area specifically is a very successful operation.
Why would the state be pushing cyber education?
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure I have the answer to that. I know that a lot of it is directed more towards urban and metropolitan type districts that are failing. I don't think they're looking at the rural area districts as needing that option. In this area, there really aren't too many charter options for kids. You get into the cities, and there may be a few charter schools that they can go to. And that's another part of the problem that I have with this funding scenario, is that it seems, as is always the case, it seems like the rural areas of the state get stabbed in the back to benefit the more metropolitan areas.
And the rural areas have more expenses, I imagine, in transportation costs alone, and that's got to be hefty with the gas?
Well, you've got huge geographic areas. I mean, Redbank's geographic area is an interesting, I even still amaze myself once in a while if I'm going to, say I'm going to take the back road down to Punxsutawney or Kittanning or something. And when I look and see how far out some of these kids live that go to Redbank, it just astounds me sometimes.
Well, it takes a half a day to drive through your district.
Yeah.
But, we don't have quite the same geographical challenges, but certainly transportation is a huge cost. Just back to the cyber charter for a second. I think it is important for everybody to realize that while the choice and the urban reasons perhaps that some of our political leaders champion the cyber charter schools, there is a direct impact on our public school students when people make that choice. The decrease in resources available for those kids in public schools is real, it's absolute, and it has an impact on what we're able to deliver.
Every year or so, it seems the question of vouchers comes up. Is that similar to the problem with cyber schools?
Well, I think actually a cyber school is a voucher. We would oppose the voucher program because it's pushing money away from public schools. It's exactly what a cyber charter school does. And you'll hear the advertisements on the air that will say it's free of charge. There's no charge to the parent. That's true. However, it's costing the local school district $10,000 to $20,000, as Mike's already indicated to you. And that money has to come out of our revenues that we're using to provide programs for students. If we pull 2 or 3 students out of our district to go to cyber charter school, and we're paying $30,000 for that, we can't make that up within our local budget, within our local classroom, without making some rather significant changes, which drives up our sizes. So the voucher program, much along the same line, it's pulling money away from the public school and not the number of students that would be required for us to make those adjustments without negatively impacting the other students.
And I agree with Mike. I think that this whole bundling approach to this, the current preliminary budget from the state relates to that voucher. They want to be able, the state wants to be able to attach a dollar amount to a student and make it transportable, sort of a backpack approach to school funding. So regardless of where that student goes, there's a dollar amount attached, and that dollar value travels with him. And again, it comes back to school choice and the school choice movement as a response to failing schools. And I don't think that is an issue that's inherent in this area, in this region. The quality of education that our kids have is well beyond the expectations and the standards established at the state.
It's almost like trying to outsource the education aspects.
Well, it is, and I think if you look at least every bit of research that I've seen recently on cyber and charter schools, they're ineffective. Their test scores are lower than what you're seeing in the public schools. I saw a show on, or an interview on Channel 4 TV News, I think it was, and the charter school down in the Pittsburgh area was run by a father and 3 sons, and their scores were low, but the building that they were in, they owned the building, but the charter school leased the building from them for $3 million a year. So it's all about somebody making money, and it's not about providing the quality education. And I don't know, I'm sure eventually those controls will come into place. As far as vouchers go, it's really, aside from like IC school and maybe I think there might be 1 or 2 other private schools in the area, it's really not an issue in this area because the parents really don't have the opportunity or the choice, unless they want to drive their kid 60 miles to some other school somewhere. There really isn't that choice for that private school to take that voucher to. And I also think that, I haven't heard what the numbers are recently that they're talking about making those vouchers for, but if it's a $1,500 voucher and the private school is a $5,000 or $10,000 a year school, it's not going to benefit the average family anyway because they're not going to be able to afford that huge tuition to go to that private school.
And again, I think if a cyber school was to be successful, you have to have a tremendous amount of support from the parents to make sure that they're doing everything, and there's a support factor there that families have to look at.
It's not that a cyber school could not be effective in education. It's simply that the cost of that comes back to hurt what the local public school district is able to do for their children. It's a reasonable educational alternative, but the funding should be a separate and distinct source from the public education dollar.
Are cyber schools linked with homeschooling?
We're starting to see a little bit more of that across the state. Homeschooling is a completely different area, and certainly parents have the right to choose that route. But a lot of the homeschooling parents are now starting to look at cyber charter school as an option to provide some of that education to their children, which then costs money for the local public school, which wasn't even a student that we had previously. Now it's money out of our pocket, and we never had that student.
Great. I want to thank all of you for joining me today on Clarion Connection. We still have a couple minutes, so I'll let each of you have a brief words here. Glenn, that's brief.
Brief? Okay. I guess I have a reputation of maybe talking too much. But I'd just like to thank the superintendents, my superintendent Mike and my other superintendent Mike, here for coming out here and kind of sticking their neck out. I think it's important that we educate the public on what's happening with public education. I think we get a bad rap in public education, and it's not really deserved in this area specifically. Again, I want to thank our entire administrative team, our support staff, and our professional staff at Redbank for their continued ability to work with us through this disaster that we're involved in right now. And thank you, Ron, for having us on here and helping get the word out.
Ron, thank you again for the opportunity. I want to thank everybody for being here as a proud Redbank Valley alum. There's 2 great school districts represented here. There's no question about that. But I would urge our taxpayers to talk with our representatives, our state representative, our state senator, contact folks from the governor's office, the Department of Education, and let them know that our standards for public education here are very high. We want to be able to continue those, and their support in Harrisburg is going to be needed to do that. It's not a local problem. It is a state problem at this particular point.
That's right, Eric. Your mother served in the Redbank board for years and years.
She most certainly did, and I am a proud Bulldog.
Superintendents?
I'll just echo what was previously stated. I think getting out and touching base with our local representatives is critical, especially prior to the final budget at the state level being established, and just recognize the Redbank Valley community for the support the last year and going into 2 years in dealing and working through these tough decisions that the school board and the administration and district have made.
And Mike Stahlman, superintendent from Clarion area, gets the final word on Clarion Connection this morning.
All righty. Thank you, Ron. I'd just like to thank you for inviting us in here today, giving us an opportunity to let the public know that public education really is working and what the problems are that we're facing with the revenue sources from the state government. Contact your legislatures. Let them know that public education is important for all of our children.